Good Saturday to you, everybody. I am Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. Joined now by my very dear friend. He is a decorated journalist, an incredibly successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area. And he's joined us again today, like he has for nearly the last 2 decades, talking sports from a macro perspective. I'm micro on the ground. You know him. I love him. My great friend, the great Jonathan Shop. John, to you and Alicia, Happy New Year, my friend. Great to talk to you.
It's always a pleasure. Happy New Year indeed. It's just around the corner finally. Everybody get ready to write the new numbers on the checks and make those mistakes we make every year when the year turns and get ready to turn the burner up another level on the NFL season. It's not just the teams in the playoff hunt. You've got that whole other side, teams that know they're done, that they're out, that they're going to be moving in a new direction. They actually start getting hustling a little faster in the off season, or sorry, in the start of the new year as well. Just don't hear as much about it. But look, right now, it's not that the NFL has overtaken this holiday season. It's just the NFL is everywhere in this holiday season, it seems right now, like we've never seen. Almost a game every day. It's a good time to be an NFL fan.
So I want to ask you this question, John, because as you know, the Raiders went out and won last week, which I told you they wanted to win. That was the desire. I had people cuss me out. You're so stupid. They don't want to win. Yeah, they did. The owner told me that. The players told me that. They wanted to win. They went out and won. I understand fans being frustrated. I get that. That makes sense to me but if you're not, I mean, at the same time, you got guys playing for incentives in their contracts, future deals, all of it. I had no problem with the win. I thought it was great for the team. The owner goes down and celebrates in the locker room. I know fans, well, they took him to pieces for that. But at the end of the day, you can't have a motto, just win, baby, and then try not to win. You cannot be part of your DNA. You can't be duplicitous. You can't be oil and water. What was your thoughts?
You really can't. The thought is it is professional football first, and you're going to see every NFL team for the better of the league try to win every week. This week, it's probably going to be the Giants, for example, that maybe get a W. Last week, it was the Raiders. And of course, that's got to be built in by de facto. We don't see a Matt Ryan situation here. We don't see a Russell Wilson or a Derek Carr situation. We don't see a Daniel Jones situation. We don't see a situation where a quarterback is being removed or should be removed and basically put over there for contractual reasons. That's not here. So there's nothing but runway to say, try to be the best team you can and win each week. You can't. You just can't do that. The NFL doesn't have a tanking problem yet, but it's starting to be sprinkled, of course, in the air. So they've maybe got to figure out a way to try to protect against that. Not necessarily like the NBA does in an 82-game schedule, but in some kind of a smart way. At the same time, we've talked about college pro football is very different than college football was. So now we're going to have guys coming into the draft already with some business experience kind of at their backs. And I think you're going to start to see more of an attempt by high draft picks to dictate where they do not go to play, where they're willing to go and where they are not willing to go. We may see that as soon as this coming April. This is going to be something that is different and maybe will serve as a balance towards I'm going to tank for Joe Smith, who, is by far the number one pick next year. So it's not a surprise that the Raiders would play and compete to win. It's really the fabric of professional football. We, as a whole, from a big perspective, we don't want to start seeing teams just going tank city. That's not best for the sport. Again, maybe a little roster expansion, maybe a little different situation with high draft picks saying, I'm not going there, assuming they have some success with that. The shape is going to change a little bit. As far as that goes. What should not change is the attempt to win. You're not going to see NFL teams. You're not going to see 53 NFL players just roll out there and just say, well, we're not even into it. Those times are not coming.
All right, John, I have not asked you this prior to the program, and if you haven't, we'll talk about it next week. Did you get to see my question of Goodell on adding an upstairs official, which you and I have talked about at length?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I know we talked about it, and the
Okay,
issue
I
to bring it
will.
actually to the front is only a good thing that will sprinkle around the league, because as soon as one of these calls comes up that throws the game off, that's when you're going to see people reset that and run with it.
All right, good. We'll talk about that next week. John, when you look at the Raiders, I do not think it's a guarantee that AP is done. I don't think Mark Davis wants to get rid of him. I was the first to report publicly the name of Mike Vrabel months ago. You and I even talked about it. So I was out ahead of it. I knew that was kind of, if they went away from AP, that's where they were going. Or certainly where they wanted to go is probably the better term. But I had something interesting happen that I want to run by you. And I found it funny, in the interest of fair disclosure, you brought it up in your notes to you and I to talk about today. I had a seasoned NFL guy who no longer works in the league, but he is a name synonymous with the league, who said to me, "What about your boy Saban?" He goes, "You don't think he'd be itching to try to scratch a little bit of football itch and to maybe show everybody what happened in Miami is not, reality with him?" Now, I don't think he would do it, and I'm not advocating for the Raiders to walk away from AP, but if they did, what do you think of them knocking on the door of Saban? Now, listen, I am going to make the point very clear. I think it would be a terrible decision by the Raiders, and I'm going to tell you why. Tom Brady is going to have a massive voice in this organization, and Nick Saban does not coexist. Nick Saban is the organization. I think it would just not work. Let's just leave it with this. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell it works. I think he could absolutely work for a Shad Khan in Jacksonville. I absolutely think he could work in Atlanta with Arthur Blank. I don't think this is not because of Mark. I just don't think, I think there are too many reasons he would not work in Vegas. I'd love your opinion on that.
Well, first of all, with Belichick really changing the entire look of the coaching landscape, going to not only college, but like a tier 3 job, everything seems now possible that was once impossible. So I do think if the Raiders decide they want to make a move or they're going to make a move, you absolutely have to call Nick Saban to see if he has any kind of interest and what that might look like. At the same time, what you mentioned about being the voice of the organization, that does not seem to be a great fit with Tom Brady coming with Tom Brady's influence, unless it like happened right now and Tom Brady's influence was small for, 25 through 28 and then all of a sudden got really big. So it's hard to see that kind of thing coming. It's funny if you look way back, like more than 20 years ago, Bill Polian has stories about looking to hire Nick Saban. And then he's like, great, and then I pretty much control all the personnel and all the drafting and all this stuff. And the NFL teams are like, hit the brakes. Maybe some similar stuff with the Giants as well. So it's funny how things change, but they don't change. But yeah, you got to make that call and say, listen, things have changed. Your buddy went to college. Maybe you want to come back and take care of some unfinished business in the NFL. Certainly worth an inquiry. And you do mention that it may make some more sense in other places like Jacksonville. You'd have to find out how much he's willing to or wants to get into that coaching space. I do think that Nick Saban, if he were coaching in the NFL in 2025, would be significantly better than he was when he was coaching in the NFL in 2000, the early 2000s. That we will grant him. At the same time, some of us remember a couple of Ohio State, Michigan State football games where Nick Saban was coaching against Mike Vrabel. When you look at it in that context, you think about who would be the better NFL coach right now. If anybody's shopping for a coach, I think they probably got to start with Mike Vrabel and see if he has any interest in their job, whether it's in New York, whether it's in Jacksonville, Las Vegas, on you go. The dynamic that's interesting here is the Brady dynamic, which we did talk about and which will come into much bigger focus as soon as the Raiders, if they do make a decision to change at the head coaching slot. If they do, watch all the heads turn towards the Vrabel? Would he be willing to work for Brady? Could they coexist? How does that work from teammate to coach to I can fire you, etc.? This very interesting stuff that's probably coming sooner than later. A lot of decision making in that building right now between Mark Davis, between Tom Brady, and some weird off the field stuff. The only reason I say it's weird is it doesn't come into play every day. So as they evaluate what they want to do, there's some different shades of color in this one as far as typical black and white hire. We like this coach because this and that. There's some outside stuff with the Brady influence, with the turmoil in the head coaching business, with the off-field stuff that Pierce has that's going to end up having some kind of play out into what they decide. As Raiders fans know everywhere, some big decisions coming in the first quarter of 2025.
Yep, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I want to dig into the schedule. I want to get into just the dynamic of the NFL. That you can't interview coaches until certain points. You can't do and are some guys hurt because of their team's success? I heard something recently, and I want to run it by you. I heard that if a team can fire their coach whenever they want, they can hire whenever they want, but I was told that they should, if they're within the organization or not currently employed, but let it be a closed window. So like once the playoffs starts, nobody can hire till the playoffs are over. That way it encourages you, if you're going to fire your guy, but who you've got is in-house and you can meet all the Rooney rules and everything else, great. But if you can't, then there's no hiring until after the playoffs. What do you think of that? I mean, I think that's too long to go without a head coach. But I talked with some guys. I had one general manager tell me my head coach doesn't have that much to do with that time of the year. He goes, if I didn't have one, it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. John, what are your thoughts?
It probably is in the best interest of the sport, especially in the current season in the playoffs, to have it sealed off where there is a blackout period where you cannot interview, hire, really do anything with your head coaching situation, especially relative to other teams. So the coordinator of this, the coordinator of that, that probably makes sense. As far as timing out when it should begin, that's an interesting equation. It also brings to mind the potential of a bye week or a semi-bye week after what will be week, the 18th game in the future or the 17th game now. Basically, should there be a semi-bye between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs? If that's the case, then you maybe have your window where you put the start of that blackout period to protect the teams that are in there. I want to see the NFL do as much as they can to support and protect the integrity of the most popular form of entertainment in the country and really the best sport that we've got going. We want to see them do things to solidify and support that structure and the integrity of the competition that is the NFL playoffs. We both like the amount of playoff teams that they have right now. We like how there's just one that gets the bye. All that makes sense. What we don't want to see is somebody who's a coordinator for one of those teams that has a bye or has a divisional championship in sight. They've got the home field for the wild card game. We don't want to see them getting taken and led around and they're out of town. They're distracted. Nothing good happens there. So there probably is a smart way to create a blackout period where there is no hiring, no interviewing, or anything like that. And once again, it leads me back to that idea of adding 2 people to the competition committee that don't have any other jobs. They're not trying to run the Steelers. They're not trying this. They're not trying that. Give me 2 competition committee members that are sitting there all the time with, it's not like they've got to be thinking of ideas, but they are just working for the competition committee. And I don't know, maybe you hire one Manning, you get 2 for the price of 1 in that job. Something like that. Give me 2 guys on the competition committee that don't have any other jobs in football, and they should be able to come up with a really good idea, for example, of creating this blackout period. So we're not messing with the playoffs that are coming, and we're not totally blocking teams that need a head coach. Like you said, it's not a whole lot for them to do before any kind of major draft prep even comes.
All right. So at the owners meeting, I had someone suggest something to me, and I was going to wait till after the season, but since you kind of hit on it, I want to talk about it. They said that years ago, there used to be a thing in baseball. You and I are old enough to remember this, where the commissioner had a right to do anything he saw fit in the best interest of the game. And he didn't have to ask owners, he didn't have to ask players, he could do anything he wanted. This person at the owners meeting suggested to me that there be a new committee. And he said, maybe put on there a couple of former players, put on there maybe a couple of former management people, maybe a former owner, but get 6 people together and the commissioner who can make any decision in the best interest of the game that overrides anything, that doesn't require approval. You've got to have an equal number of representatives of players, management, ownership, but enough where the commissioner can be overruled. And it could only be used in very unique situations in the best interest of the game. To me, it's a little too Pollyanna. I just don't see how it can work. But this person said to me, Hondo, there are too many things happening now because of people's agenda that are not in the best interest of the game. He goes, I think this is a need. He goes, do I think we'll get it? I'm going to clean up his answer. No chance. But he goes, I think it needs it. He goes, I know others have talked about it. John, what do you think?
You're talking about kind of a committee to cut through red tape. And the emphasis is on what is best for the sport in the game. We circle back. Not all roads lead to the Masters, but a lot of them do as far as running a sporting event, because the Masters is the most organized sporting event you're ever going to see in professional sports for a lot of reasons. It's in the same place every year. They're always constantly improving, but the point is they've got people and or a few folks in position that make decisions in the best interest of that event. They're not always popular. They're more often than not extremely effective. And if they maybe make a rare miss here, they get the thing back on track. So this is a good idea. And it does start with the idea of how are we going to convince or get the authority to put this thing together? Well, somebody's got to go into that owner's room and look around the room and say what you just laid out. Some of you guys are more interested in your own business success, or you're really pushing the edge of being overly competitive, which is okay. Players play, GMs manage, owners own. It's okay that they're pushing to try to advocate for their team and compete as hard as they can to win. That's fine. We need some stewards of this sport to keep it running really smoothly and to keep on sharpening the knives and getting it as cut, clean, trimmed, and neat as we can. We need stewards who are not looking through the lenses of what do I got to do to help the Buffalo Bills win, and are looking broadly at what is best for the NFL in ensuring integrity, fair competition, hopefully to identify the best pro football team in the world that year. This is a good idea. It probably needs to be, I'm thinking of, you got to plant some seeds, but you might need to go in there with a weed eater and a bushwhacker and then plant some seeds. Who's got the stones? Who's got the guts? Who's got the heart to go in and tell the owners, this is what you need and here's why? Hopefully that has happened before. If not, it needs to happen at the next owners meeting, and maybe you chip away at it for a few years and come up with something. It's not really necessarily a committee to cut the red tape, but that's kind of like a committee to get straight to an action point. So something dramatic happens. Somebody's season is ended because of a call that was either missed or had to be made because of the way the rule is, or that it's very clear something needs to change. These guys just go in and change it. They just change it on the fly because they've got the authority to do what's in the best interest of the NFL. This is a good idea. It's probably going to need some behind the scenes action, but make no mistake, it's very necessary. because it's natural for the Eagles, the Seahawks, the Texans. It's natural for these people to get super competitive, almost overly competitive, as we've seen going way back to the issues the NFL had with Jerry Jones, even further back, of course, with Al Davis. This is a good idea. I want to see who's got what it takes to call it out. And this might be an area where the NFLPA could speak up in support of that, try to put a little more heat on the
Let's
owners.
talk about the turnover tallies. I mean, top and bottom, Jiminy Christmas matchup.
We have learned a lot from Coach Belichick's numerous shows this year, and some of us knew how important turnovers were in the NFL. But let's take a look now that we've got such practically a full season on it, okay? Obviously, the number one stat, I don't even count the score as a stat, but you put the score aside, the number one stat to determining win or loss is your turnover margin. Here's the interesting thing, folks, and you can dig into this if you'd like. The bottom 5 teams in terms of turnovers, if you look at turnover margin, the bottom 5, they have won 14 games total this year, coming into the week. The top 5 have an average of 11 wins. So you go from 5 teams splitting less than 3 wins to the top 5 averaging 11. As far as who's at the very top and who's at the very bottom of the standings, there's a very strong evidence that your turnover margin seems to be a great separator between the really, really good and the really, really bad. What does that mean? Maybe you keep it in the back of your mind. If your team is really doing well with turnover margin, you got a chance for a big, big year. If your team is doing really, really bad for a turnover margin, you got a chance at a really high draft pick. I mean, not a chance. You're really pretty much guaranteed. It's amazing how you look at the standings, you look at the turnover margin, they match up really, really well at the very top and the very bottom of this NFL season.
I agree with you, John. All right, let's talk about, is it brain damage? Is it arrogance? What is going on? I want to rephrase that because I don't think it's brain damage. I'm not saying that. But is it what's going on with Aaron Rodgers? And let me just say, in the interest of complete full disclosure, I don't dislike Aaron. I don't have any issues with Aaron. I'm fine with Aaron, but it has the feel of a train wreck. I don't know what it is, man. I just don't get it. But man, it's just, he's got his Netflix special on Enigma and just his appearances. I can't put my finger on it. And let me just say this. I don't think he's a bad guy. This is nothing, no assault on his character. To be honest with me, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Can you?
I can't really put my finger on it. There does seem to be an embedded arrogance for some people who look at Rodgers going back more than 20 years now. And maybe a big chip on the shoulder was cut the way the NFL draft played out for him. The first sign, and he came off as a real laid back California guy. That's fine. The first sign I found of some weirdness was, he had a 60 Minutes profile piece on him 10 plus years ago, and he had a big problem with that, which is like a red flag. It's like, that's a little strange. And now you've got him this week saying, being released would be a first, being released by a teenager, that would also be a first, on his weekly laugh off with the Pat McAfee show. This is a strange guy who looks like, it's not that he sunk the Jets, but he doesn't seem to accept or realize the historical perspective that is going to shine on the Aaron Rodgers years in New York. Yes, they will be highlighted by a guy that carried out the flag and then blew his Achilles, but they will also be highlighted by this weird stuff like this, talking about, I'm going to be fired by a teenager, which is basically referring to the idea that the Jets are run by the owner's teenage kids. This is a strange guy. To me, there appears to be an embedded arrogance that's always kind of been there, and it's kind of grown over the years. And some of that stuff you can get away with. And look, he's got some unique perspectives on things that are probably worth considering and maybe some good ideas. He's got some that are fall off the cliff, funny and ridiculous. The behavior is strange, and is taking a weird turn. It's almost this week like he's setting up for some big final act in New York. We do not think he's going to take his shirt off and run around like Antonio Brown did. No. But what's going to happen here? This is going to be one to watch. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers is done playing professional football. I tell you what, even if he's sitting with no team next year until November 1st, I wouldn't know for sure that he was going to be done, because somebody may want to say, hey, maybe we pull this guy in for the run here. But this is a strange guy. This is strange behavior. He's getting ready for a big exit out of New York City from these Jets. We're going to tune in to see. But for my money, there's a weird embedded arrogance that's always been there. And over time, it's come out in different ways. And right now it's coming out in a classic form as he winds down a horribly failed experiment with the Jets.
I got to tell you, the NFL is too much of a driven league, quarterback driven league, to think he won't get another shot. But man, sometimes just stop talking. Just
sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yeah. Maybe imagine if he basically said nothing for the last 12 years. His aura around his mystique would be huge, and I don't think he cares that much about that. But he ought to care about saying strange stuff like he's going to get released by a teenager. This is the NFL.
All right. I think the NFL has too many games. I know they're going to go to 18. I know they're going to. I don't like it. I think right now the NBA is crashing. I mean, that's all over the place. It's crashing for a lot of reasons. I don't think there are too many games is the only reason, but I think it's a huge part of it. It just doesn't matter. You know, I've talked to people. I knew a guy who, a buddy of mine, didn't have a ton of money, bought tickets to take his kids to go to a Pistons game to see their favorite player, and the favorite player decided he didn't want to play. And the guy paid a ton of money, was very upset. He told me, I'm done with the NBA, won't even turn around in his house anymore. It's too long. No, I think there are a lot of reasons for the NBA. That's one of them. Major League Baseball, it's kind of the same thing. Way too many games. They just don't matter. John, I think we are running into an issue where it's getting too long, but there are some asking, is the schedule too short? I can't even fathom that. I'm talking to players all the time. All the time. And they're like, man, it is such a long season. People do not grasp, because they're sitting in their Barker lounger with some nachos and some spinach artichoke dip and you know, a hot dog. They don't understand the physicality of this game, the brutality of the game. They're not getting it. I can't imagine it, but there are people that think it's too short. Clearly, you know what side I am on. What do you think?
You're talking about the folks out there chilling in La Jolla, the Raider fans in Marin County just kicking it with it. They know the deal.
Rancho Cucamonga.
Yeah.
I've never been to Rancho Cucamonga, but don't you love that as the name of a town? Where do you live? Rancho Cucamonga.
It's very hard to defeat that name. You know, it's a long name, but typing it out or writing it out, or when you hear it, it catches your attention. So it's a memorable spot. That wouldn't be so bad. When you look at it, let's start with a whiteboard. We're just starting with a whiteboard and we're starting to run the numbers. You come up with the natural, hey, 18 makes sense, but you know what also makes a lot of sense? 12 games in the regular season. So I can actually see a better argument or a really clear position. We're starting from scratch saying you ought to have a 12-game season. Okay. And then a couple bye weeks in there. Okay. And then the playoff system that you have now. I can see a real support for that.
What would you say if they said we're going to 12 regular season games, but everybody's in the playoffs?
I like that idea better than 18.
Oh, I do too.
I like that idea better than 18. Everybody's in the playoffs. I like that idea better than 18 off the top of my head. what you might ensure there is you're going to have a better chance with a 12-game season that you're not going to have bodies break down to the extent that they do because of fatigue in November and December. As far as how many weeks that would actually play out to be, it might, off the top of my head, it might be a couple weeks shorter. Obviously for some teams, but what would you be getting out of it? The idea we'd be getting more quality. The idea would be that we're getting to see the best players play, and somebody's got to be there saying, what do we do as the NFL to get ourselves the best opportunity to identify the best team that season, not the team that was healthiest at the end of the year. How do we get the idea to identify the best team? Well, the more starters and more players that you've got, obviously the more likely that's going to be the case. We've seen the Chiefs probably get knocked out of a Super Bowl with one injury too many. When the offensive lineman got hurt in the AFC title game, for example. We've seen other teams like the Lions who look like they're getting beyond stressed, injured to the end. I don't think that's a horrible idea. So everybody's in this playoffs. We have 12 games. You're playing your division. You're playing other people. And then what you've probably done there is you've built up some intrigue for the early games because you're going to have teams playing
for seeding.
On one conference. Yeah, you're going to have teams playing each other that haven't played during the year, and you've got some interest there. So this is not a horrible idea. Hopefully the players have some thought, have some people working for them who are thinking about these things to bring them content when they go to meet with owners to negotiate, to say, hey, have you looked at this? Have you thought about this? Have you considered this? This is the kind of stuff that can help the thing go even more forward than just as simple as we're going to 18, the calendar stretching out even more. What is that going to do for the quality of football and the quality of product in the NFL? Probably not going to help it.
No, and I want to tell you this. So I heard the original idea of 12 and everybody makes it in from a player. I like the idea of 14. And then basically, if you go to the Super Bowl, there are 5 more games. So you can play 19. Whereas now, if you play 18, there'll be 21. So it's 2 less. But anyways, I had a player say to me, all of a sudden those early games, because you're playing for seeding,
They
and
matter.
he goes, yeah, and then he goes, you play the regular season, a 2-week break for everybody to heal and get better. Can you imagine all of the media and all the attention 2 weeks leading up to the mega playoffs or the super playoffs? And then bam, you can go, you play the first 2 rounds. So now you're down to 8 teams, another week break. Bam, down to 4 teams, then bam, down to 2, and then you have another week break. I mean, you could extend it, keep the interest there. And then I had a player, and this is where this came about, who said, I disagree with you and John. You don't have to expand the roster. Just go to 12 games and everybody's in the playoffs. Now, I like 14, but I thought that was cool. That came to me from a player. He liked that.
It is cool. It's a good idea. It is cool, and it's good to have those things in the mix. I still think you need to expand the game day rosters to at least 70. What I am thinking about is if they go to an 18-game schedule, is 70 even enough? You may even need a few more than 70. When you look at the injuries that have happened to the Lions, for example, you may need even more, or some ability to maybe even interchange them more easily. Although I don't think it's a big issue with practice squad to regular squad, unless you're trying to go to another team with a waiver situation. But when we look at this week, the NFL is everywhere this holiday season on purpose. They picked 4 teams and really kind of stuck them with going from Saturday to Wednesday. That stood out to me as a little bit of a weird thing. Why didn't they just run a triple header on Boxing Day on the 26th? I don't know why they didn't just do that for player preservation, if you will. They asked a lot of the Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, and Steelers. They asked an awful lot. They got through the games okay. Let's see what happens from here. It was a real stress going from Saturday to Wednesday. I'm not opposed to the idea of playing on Christmas Day. I think they might have taken low-hanging fruit and just run a triple header on the 26th. But you're thinking of a bigger issue that hopefully has given people something to think about. the idea of a shorter regular season and then let's play it off. Everybody's got a chance. That would probably make for a much more exciting. I mean, that would probably make for a much more exciting and actually an all-inclusive feel for the sport, because out of the 32 teams, you're probably going to have at least somewhere in the mid or upper 20s that think, hey, we can actually go somewhere in these playoffs. And if you can work an incentivization somehow, if there's a way to work an incentivization for, if you overachieve in the playoffs, you actually get a better draft pick for those at the very bottom, then you might really have something that would change the landscape as far as encouraging teams to be as competitive as they can all throughout the season, which takes away the potential tank that somebody might want to introduce.
I'm telling you, I thought that was a great idea. Okay, before we get to our picks, I got one more thing. The NBA, I mean, the NFL will never admit this, but I was told by people in the NFL, they got really tired of the NBA, flexing when they felt like that's like a ant going up to an elephant and doing their "here I am." So they throw games on Sunday to send a message. Wow, did they send a message? They
They did.
clobbered the NBA. The NBA is collapsing for a numerous amount of reasons, and the NFL's over there throwing dirt on it. And the NFL wants the other leagues to do good. They've got a great relationship with the NHL. They got a great relationship with Major League Baseball. They, I would not call it a great relationship with basketball. That's just based on what I hear. But the point is, they flex their muscles, and again, when the NBA is already in major trouble, they're throwing dirt on it. Come on, John. It was so funny. I couldn't help. I got a text from somebody just with the ratings before they were public and just made me crack up. It's hilarious, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I saw LeBron. I think somebody got LeBron James saying something out loud about it. That, Christmas Day is our day or something. Bad idea. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Don't say anything, because you're going to get squashed. I like that the NFL squashed that ridiculous college pro football playoff first round. I like that. I hope they do that again, just to remind people, we do the NFL better than you do, so maybe you ought to do your own thing and maybe think about it a little more. They can do what they want. They are the most popular form of entertainment in the sport. The NBA folks should tread pretty lightly and try to stay out of the way. Otherwise, they might get picked on again and smashed up again. Maybe they need to reevaluate their schedule on Christmas Day. It seems, they try to book it an whole day, and that's fine. But you give the people a choice between the two, it's not even a question. And even if it were low-level NFL teams, I don't think it would be a question. So,
all right, so we have been ahead of the curve here, breaking a lot of news for many years. I'm going to give you a little tidbit. Are you ready?
Yes.
I heard this at the owners' meetings. For years, the NFL just stayed away from Fridays because of high school football, and they just stayed away from Fridays in general. But now you're seeing the college football start sneaking in on Fridays and everything else. And I was told by someone who I completely trust, if this keeps going on and you see all this bragging about, oh, look how good college football playoff was on Friday or whatever, don't be shocked if the NFL doesn't take a shot over somebody's bow and say, okay, fine, we'll play one on Friday. We'll show you that we own that too. I was told, and I agree with this, this person said to me, if I ran any league, NHL, NBA, MLB, college basketball, high school, dominoes. He did end with dominoes. I thought that was funny. He goes, I'm going to the NFL before I make any decision saying, Mother, may I have some more? You are the king. Where do you want me to play? Because I do not want to get into a contest with you. And he goes, I would do everything in the world to have a great relationship with the NFL because they've proven to be good friends to people who are their friends, and they are out to crush you if you think for 1 second they can't. What do you think of all that?
As you know, this is a dream of mine. I'm pushing every day, every year for Thursday night football to move to Friday, primarily for the better of the game, the better of the players, and beyond that, because there is not one person who was going to get in the car and go to a high school football game that is not going to go to watch the NFL. It's such a ridiculous argument. I think the NFL should move from Thursday night to Friday night as soon as possible. Get the legs on the ground in DC, get it done. I also think anybody up and coming or trying to better themselves, like the pro sports you talked about. I think about pickleball, for example, which you're now starting to see on TV. Whatever you need, whatever we can do anytime, NFL, whatever we can do to get a spot before your game, after your game, whatever. Great idea. There's an opportunity for somebody to come in smart and try to use the NFL in a mutually beneficial relationship. My point is, I agree with you. That's the better role to take. Whether the mutual beneficial is like this big or whether it's this big, that's a better idea than trying to say, this is our ground. We're scheduling this thing on this without any NFL consideration, because all you're doing there is setting yourself up to get knocked out big time. And I hope that happens to people that think they're bigger and better than the NFL, because they're not. I also hope it happens for somebody who's smart enough to think, how do we ally ourselves with the NFL in a way where they can have some benefit? And maybe it's like, oh, you know what? We'd like to target that market of people here. But we, the new guys on the block, can have a huge benefit because we're doing something with the NFL and we're not going to get in the way and get squashed by them. That's what happened here recently. And let's see what happens next, because they're not afraid, like you said, to squash if they need to.
All right, John, fearsome foursome, where are we on the year?
We are back to even, Steven, because although the best efforts were made by the Seahawks last week in a phenomenal week of games, the Seahawks did come up short against the Vikings. So we are now all tied up. These games all matter. As you know, we're limited in capacity for some of them based on the schedule. That's it. But these are the featured four, the four best NFL games left this week. We're starting with the Panthers at the Buccaneers for a couple of reasons. The Buccaneers must win. They got to win. Everybody knows that. They got to win to try to get their Southern Division championship. The Panthers, though, actually win a game last week in a fashion that showed a little bit of progress. Any chance for the Panthers to catch the Buccaneers overlooking them or shock them? Panthers at Bucks.
No. Tampa Bay is going to crush them.
I don't know about crush. I like the Buccaneers because they're at home and because they know what's at stake here, but I'm not going to be shocked if this one turns out to be an entertaining ball game. We know this show is Raider-centric, but this year, when we've been doing this featured foursome, we've had a lot of eyes on that NFC West because it's been phenomenal. Cardinals at Rams. As you know, and as the people out there know, everybody is sleeping on the Rams more than they should be right now. We saw what they did last year. It's not the same team. They're getting healthier. Cardinals at Rams. Big business taken care of last week by the Rams in New York.
I'm riding the Rams here. I'm big on McVay. I'm big on Stafford. I'm going to go with the Rams. Dexter, you going to go with the Rams? Yes. Okay. He's going with the Rams too.
I am as well. Wise choice. Sean McVay is an advantage at head coach. I think we saw that last week. They had to grit and grind their way to win a game in New York that they needed to win. They do have a significant advantage that gets overlooked too much with that head coach and Sean McVay. We love what's going on with Packers at Vikings. We love how it sets up NFC Norris battle. You know the stakes that are involved here. We're talking about the Pack going to Minnesota. It's going to be loud inside that terrifically loud glass stadium.
Lose, Pack, lose. Vikings roll.
This is what I'm looking for here. I'm going to take the Packers. I think this is setting up and they are due. I'm going to take the Packers. This may be my undoing. The Vikings may undo me from being up one and they may throw me in the back here. I like the Packers this week. I know it's going to be at home. I think there's a little bit of tightness that's going to come into Minnesota. You know what we think about some of those guys on the Packers. We have talked about the outstanding work they did drafting receivers. They have so little salary spent on such great production from those receivers, and maybe a star breaking out in Jaden Reed. Shocker. Packers over the Vikings. Mark it down. Lastly, they flex, we flex. Everybody does a little flex, flex, flex. Falcons at Commanders. Falcons have to win. They're scrambling, of course. They've made the big move. Commanders, did you see that run last week? Did you see how that thing ended? Holy cow. The believers, the bandwagon in DC is back on the road. People are jumping on Falcons at Commanders. The stakes are large.
All Commanders. I don't even think this one, John. I'm not a betting man because I don't believe in. I'm not against it. I don't bet on anything I cover. It's an integrity thing for me. I just think it's smart. If I were a betting man, I would take the Commanders and give 8, give 9. I don't even know what the spread is. Maybe even 10. I just don't think this is going to be close.
I don't know what the spread is either, but all the momentum is with the Commanders. Yes. All the momentum is there. Yes. The Falcons don't get to the quarterback very well. That doesn't help them here. But the defensive backs for the Commanders, obviously a work in progress. When we talk draft, I have some real thoughts about how simple the Commanders' drafting efforts might be after what we've seen with Jaden Daniels. Vis-a-vis, you put him in a position to succeed, you're probably going to do better than not most of the time. Call this one a shootout. Bring your shootout paraphernalia. I like the Commanders by like 3 in a shootout because I don't think they can stop the passing game very well. We know the Falcons have an effective running game. I don't see a blowout. I see Commanders close, but I like a shootout, which will hopefully remedy the situation we saw on Thursday night where we barely got any points at all.
All right. I'm going to throw this to you. Okay. You say Commanders by 3. So let me ask you this. If I give you 6 points, 6, what do you say we make this one worth 2?
So that would mean the Commanders, the Falcons, they have to lose by 6 or less.
That means the Commanders have to win by 7 or more.
Yeah. That's fine. Let's do it.
And we'll make it worth 2.
It's a flex double. Flex double worth 2. We're all tied up going into it. I got the Packers. I got the Commanders. There's a real good chance here we're going to separate for good with the flex 2, big one on Sunday night.
So we could be tied because if the Vikings win, Packers, if the Vikings lose and you're up 1, but Commanders win by 7, I guess I would be up 1. All right, but anyways,
we're going to separate it. We're going to separate right here.
Someone could go up as many as 3 or 1, but we're not going to be even next week. This is going to be a lot of fun. Hey, John, great to talk to you. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us, brother. Next week, though, we'll really dig in on my question up to Goodell about our thoughts. Could you tell everybody where to find you on social media, John?
I am at JP Spartan on the Twitter X, and one day we'll get TikTok running, but at JP Spartan.
All right, hang on. Tell him, Dex. Hold on. What do you want to say? Hi. No, you're going to tell him. He was yelling bye-bye. Tell Uncle John. Tell him. They look at him. Say bye-bye. Hold on. I got to get him to say bye-bye. All right. Thanks, John. We'll see you later, everybody. Catch you again next week, John, and we'll get back with you soon. Oh, hang on here. I'm trying to turn this thing off. Give me a break.